Do you ever find yourself getting frustrated with your aging parent over something small? And then, in the quiet moments that follow, you are visited by a wave of shame, a heavy, painful guilt that whispers, "How could you be so impatient?" Or perhaps you find yourself still waiting for an apology, an acknowledgement, a kind of love they seem unable to give, leaving an old familiar ache in your heart. This complex mix of love, duty, resentment, and grief is one of the most challenging and loneliest passages of adult life. The common mistake is to believe this is a problem of your character or theirs, that if you were just a better person, or if they would just change, this pain would go away. But what if this entire struggle is not about the present moment at all? What if the key to finding peace isn't in changing them, but in fundamentally changing the lens through which you see them? What if it's time to finally say goodbye, not to your parent, but to the ghost of the parent your inner child still desperately needs? This profound emotional passage, this great turning, is a crucial task of midlife that the psychologist Carl Jung spoke of with great depth. It is the journey of separating the human from the archetype. In this deep exploration, we will uncover why this role reversal is so painful. We will learn how to grieve the gods of our childhood, the all-powerful figures we needed our parents to be, so that we can finally meet the flawed, vulnerable, and courageous human beings they have become. This is not a guide about caregiving. This is a guide to a sacred act of psychological differentiation. So if you feel stuck in these old, painful patterns, this is your map to a new kind of relationship, a path toward peace.
The part of you that gets the most frustrated with your aging parent is not your adult self. It is your inner child. And it is not angry, it is grieving. This is one of the most hidden and painful truths of midlife. To understand it, we have to go back to the beginning of our own story. In our childhood, we do not have parents, we have gods. They are the giants who walk the earth of our small world, the sun and the moon around which our entire existence orbits. Our father is the archetype of the king, the protector, the one with all the answers. He is the one who can fix the broken toy, explain the mysteries of the universe, and make us feel safe from the monsters under the bed. Our mother is the archetype of the great mother, the nurturer, the source of all comfort and unconditional love. She is the one who knows our heart before we can speak, the soft place to land when the world is hard. This is not a memory. It is a mythology we live inside. As the great master of the psyche, Carl Jung, taught, these archetypes are immense, powerful psychic realities, and our parents are the first human containers for these godlike energies. But then, time does what time does, and the gods begin to fall. The role reversal begins, slowly at first, and then all at once. The protector now asks you for help with his taxes. The nurturer now needs you to drive her to her doctor's appointments. And the all-knowing God forgets his email password. Let me tell you about Anna, a client of mine, a brilliant teacher in her late 40s. Her father had been a renowned engineer, a man who built bridges, a man whose mind was a cathedral of logic and order. He was her hero, the one who always had the answer. But now, he is 82, and his mind, once so sharp, is becoming a soft, foggy landscape. One afternoon, she was on the phone trying to help him log into his email, a simple task, and he just couldn't remember the password. And Anna felt a flash of irritation, a surge of impatience so intense, so out of proportion, that it shocked her. And immediately after the anger came the familiar crushing wave of shame. What is wrong with me? She thought. He is an old man. Why am I so angry? This is the moment that Carl Jung would ask us to look deeper, to look beneath the anger, and find the grief. Anna's frustration was not about the password. It was the grief of the inner child inside her, watching her God crumble. Every forgotten word, every moment of confusion was another crack in the magnificent statue she had spent her life worshiping. The anger was a shield, a less vulnerable, more powerful feeling than the heartbreaking sorrow that lay beneath it. The sorrow of realizing, my father is no longer the man who can fix everything. He is no longer a god. He is a man, and he needs me. This is a profound and terrifying identity crisis, not just for them, but for us. If they are not the all-powerful parent, then who are we? We are no longer just the child. Maybe for you it was a mother who was the vibrant center of the family, who now sits quietly in a room full of people. Maybe it was a father who was a pillar of strength, who now leans on you for support. The frustration you feel, that impatience, that flash of anger is not a flaw in your character. It is a testament to the magnitude of the God they once were in your eyes. Your anger is the sound of a mythology dying. So, I invite you to pause here with me, just for a moment. Bring your own parent to mind, not as they are today, but as they were in the mythology of your childhood. What was their archetypal job? Were they the entertainer, the protector, the wise one, the anchor? What God did they represent for you? And can you feel, with so much compassion for yourself, the quiet grief of letting that God go? This is not an act of dishonor. It is the beginning of true sight. This painful realization, this fall of the gods, is not the end of the story. It is the sacred, necessary, and heartbreaking invitation to begin a new one. So, how do we begin this sacred task? How do we grieve the God so that we can finally meet the human?
The common mistake, once we see this grief, is to believe our task is to get our aging parent to heal it. We try to have the talk. We try to explain our childhood pain, hoping for that one magical moment of acknowledgement, that one apology that will finally make it all okay. And sometimes that happens, but most of the time it does not. Because you are asking a frail, tired, mortal human being to heal the wound that was inflicted by a god. They no longer have that power. Perhaps they never did. The true solution,
The sacred task of your own individuation journey is not to change them. It is to perform an act of profound inner alchemy. It is the work of differentiation. It is the conscious, courageous act of separating the two figures who live inside your psyche, the archetype and the human. The archetype is the ghost. It is the all-powerful parent God that your inner child still desperately needs and longs for. The one who should have protected you. The one who should have seen you. The human is the elderly person sitting across from you at the dinner table. A separate soul with their own wounds, their own limitations, their own untold story of grief. Your frustration is born from the constant unconscious collision of these two realities. You are projecting the needs of the ghost onto the human, and the human can never measure up. Let's return to Anna, our teacher. For months she struggled. Her new awareness of her grief didn't stop her frustration. If anything, it made it worse. Now she was angry at her father for not being the God, and angry at herself for still needing him to be one. The breakthrough came when she realized the work wasn't with him. It was with the two figures inside her. One evening, she sat in the quiet of her study, and she performed a visualization, a practice I now invite you to witness. First, she invited the archetype, the great engineer, the God of her childhood. She let herself feel the full force of her inner child's need, the longing for his strength, for his approval, for the safety of his all-knowing mind. And she grieved him. She let the tears come for the hero who was gone. She said goodbye to the God. Then she let that image gently dissolve, and she invited the human. She pictured her 82-year-old father, not as dad, but as a man named Robert, a man who grew up in the Depression, a man who was taught that a man's worth was in his mind, a man who was now terrified of losing the very thing that defined him. And for the first time, Anna saw him, not through the filter of her own need, but through the lens of his humanity. And the anger that had plagued her for years simply dissolved. It was replaced by a wave of compassion so vast it almost brought her to her knees. This is the sacred task of differentiation, and I invite you now to try it, just for a moment. Pause here with me. I invite you to close your eyes. First, visualize the archetypal parent God you needed as a child, the perfect, all-knowing, all-loving figure. And just for a breath, allow yourself to feel what you needed from them, what you didn't get, and just acknowledge the quiet grief of that gap. Now, gently, let that powerful mythical image fade. And in its place, I invite you to see your parent as they are today, as a human being, separate from you, with their own name, their own history, their own fears, their own hidden heartbreaks. See them not as your parent, but as a fellow soul on a difficult journey. Just notice the shift, the quiet release. That is the beginning of compassion. When you do this work, as Carl Jung's path of wholeness teaches us, you perform the ultimate act of reparenting. You stop asking the human to do the God's job, and you, as the wise adult you have become, step in. You turn to your own inner child, and you finally give it the acknowledgement it has been waiting for. You say to that child, "I see your pain, I see your longing, and I am here now. I will be the protector. I will be the safe place." You stop being a child demanding from a parent, and you become a parent to yourself. This is how you heal. You release them from an impossible role, and in doing so, you liberate yourself. The frustration ends because the demand ends. And once the demand is gone, a new kind of love finally has the space to be born. But what does this new love look like? How do you dance the delicate dance of compassion and boundaries?
The greatest act of love you can offer your aging parents is to stop needing them to be your parents. When you have done the sacred work of differentiation, when you have grieved the archetype and learned to see the human, an entirely new landscape of relationship opens up. The war is over. The demand is gone. And in its place, a quiet, spacious, and unconditional compassion can finally take root. You stop being angry at them for what they cannot give you, and you can finally begin to love them for who they are. This is the freedom of compassionate detachment. It does not mean you do not care. It means you care so deeply that you refuse to let your own unhealed childhood needs contaminate the precious, finite time that is left. You can have deep compassion for their fears, for their loneliness, for their physical struggles, without becoming responsible for their happiness. Their happiness is their journey. Your peace is yours. And from this grounded place, you can finally set the loving boundaries that were once impossible. Before, a boundary felt like a cruel act of abandonment, a selfish child pushing away a needy parent. But now, a boundary is an act of profound self-respect and respect for the relationship itself. It is your wise adult protecting the energy of the sanctuary you have built inside. It is no longer a reactive, angry, "leave me alone." It is a calm, centered, "I love you, and I can talk for 15 minutes today." It is a loving, "Mom, I hear how anxious you are, but I cannot be the container for that anxiety. Perhaps we can talk about the garden instead." These are not acts of rejection. They are the sacred architecture of a sustainable adult-to-adult relationship. Let's go back to Anna one last time, the teacher with the brilliant, fading father. After she did the inner work, after she grieved the God and met the man, her interactions with her father transformed. She stopped trying to help him with his email. She let that battle go. Instead, she started asking him about the bridges he had built, about his childhood. She stopped needing him to have the answers for her future, and instead became the curious, loving curator of his past. Their conversations became shorter, quieter,
And for the first time in decades, they were filled with a simple, uncomplicated warmth. She had let go of the father she needed, and in doing so, she finally got to have the father who was actually there. This is the great paradox and the final gift. When you release your parents from the impossible burden of your past expectations, you give both of them and yourself the most precious gift of all, the freedom to simply be present together in the time that is left. You are no longer trying to solve the past in the present. You are just showing up for the present. And in that quiet presence, free from the ghosts and the demands of the inner child, you might discover a new kind of connection. Not the connection between a God and a child, but the simple, profound human connection between two souls nearing the end of their shared chapter. Pause here with me, just for a moment. Imagine a relationship with your parent, free from the weight of the past, free from the frustration, free from the guilt. What does that peace feel like? I invite you to consider this not as a distant fantasy, but as a real possibility. A possibility that begins not with them changing, but with the inner work you are doing right now. This is the final act of love. Not to fix them, not to save them, but simply to see them. And in seeing them, to finally set yourself free. This work is not easy. It is some of the hardest and most sacred work we will ever do. But it is the path to peace. And as you learn to navigate the archetypal roles within your own family, you may begin to notice something strange. You may begin to see these same dynamics: the king, the rescuer, the rival, playing out in a place you once thought was purely professional, a place you thought was just about tasks and deadlines, your workplace.
We have walked a difficult and sacred path together today. We have journeyed into the heart of the most complex of human bonds. We have named the frustration, the guilt, and the quiet, hidden grief that comes with the fall of the gods. And we have learned the great secret that Carl Jung's work illuminates for us, that our deepest struggle is often not with the people in front of us, but with the ghosts we carry inside of us. The journey of differentiation, of separating the human from the archetype, is the final act of growing up. It is the moment you stop being a child demanding from a parent, and you become an adult, capable of loving a fellow human. And the great paradox is this: when you stop needing them to be the parent you wanted, you finally get to have the parent who is there. Not a god, not a savior, just a person, a soul nearing the end of their own story, who you now have the profound privilege of meeting with a clear and open heart. This is the final gift, the gift of presence. A presence free from the demands of the past. A presence that finds connection not in deep healing conversations, but in the quiet warmth of a shared meal. In the simple rhythm of watching a show together. In the silent holding of a hand. This is not a lesser love. It is a more sober, more realistic, and ultimately a more profound love. A love that has made peace with what is. So I invite you now to a final ceremony.
a quiet ritual to seal this new understanding in your heart. This is a declaration of your own emotional adulthood, a final compassionate goodbye to the God of your childhood, so you can say a true, present hello to the human. If you are willing, right now, to consciously begin this final act of love, to release your parents from the impossible role of the archetype, and to meet them from this day forward as a fellow soul, I invite you to a courageous act of declaration in the comments below. Let this not be for me, but a quiet promise to your own soul. Write these powerful, healing words. I am letting go of the God to love the human. Let this be the anchor for your new beginning, a testament to your courage to love what is real. And as you begin to see the archetypes that have shaped your family, you may start to see these same ghosts, these same dynamics in a place you once thought was purely logical. What happens when your boss becomes the new king? When your competitive colleague becomes the rival sibling? That is the journey we take next, as we explore your workplace, not as a place of work, but as a surprising and powerful alchemical lab for your soul. But for now, just be here, in the quiet peace of this new compassion. The war is over. You are free to love.